Welcome, my friends, to Life Interrupts Us. It's my podcast. It's new. This is season one, and we're excited about it. This season, we're focusing on relationships and all aspects of it. We're going to talk about dating. We're going to talk about friendship. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about romance. We're going to talk about having low standards and lofty expectations. We're going to talk about fathers, parents, children. We're going to try to cover everything that speaks to the realm of relationships. But here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it with style. We're going to do it with my style. My style? I'm glad you asked. I'm a storyteller. Yes, in other realms of my life, I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, author, all that good stuff. But in this particular realm, I'm a storyteller. And boy, do I have stories to tell. Some of them will make you laugh. Some of them, they'll be tough to hear. Some of them come with lessons that I've learned that maybe you can learn. Some of them, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm going to keep it real on this podcast so that you can know that I'm authentic, that I'm not playing around with just being another guy with another podcast, rambling on. Nah, I got some real stuff to say. I have some real lived experiences, some of them exciting, some of them devastating. But all of them are centered around this one fact. Life interrupts us all. I just decided I want to start talking about it. I want to start talking about some of the interruptions that I've had. And I've had a lot. So this season, as we focus on relationships, you'll hear me talk quite a bit about the interruptions that I've had. Things that didn't go right. Some things that did. Either way, just keep tuning in. Buckle up. Because Stephen Wayne is going to keep it all the way real. So, let's get ready to overcome the interruptions. Hey, my friends, how you doing? Listen, everybody loves a comeback story, right? You know, they do it in the movies. They do it in books. They even do it in plays. Redemption, second chance. You think of Sha'Carri Richardson, right? 4 years ago, we kept her out of the Olympics. 4 years later, she's a silver and a gold medalist. Think of Robert Downey Jr., crackhead, meth head, or heroin, or whatever he was on back in the 80s, because I'm from the 80s. So in the 80s, he was the guy. He was part of the 80s brat pack. But 30 years later, he's Iron Man, making $100 million a movie. Everybody loves a second chance. It's just something serendipitous about it. But second chances don't come without interruption, because second chance really says that there was a first chance, and the first chance didn't go very well. That's where this podcast comes in. By the way, I'm rude. My name's not rude, but I'm being rude. My name is Stephen Wayne, and I am a storyteller. And the name of this podcast is Life Interrupts Us, because it truly does. Every single day, life interrupts us. But what I'm going to do during this podcast is I'm going to tell you stories with some anecdotal information, some remedies for some of the things that life throws at us. I don't have all the answers, but I do have some. I've been through some things. I've done some things. I've had some things done to me. And because of that, I think that those stories, the things that I've been through, things that I've taken myself through, things that someone drugged me through, they're worth telling. Because I know, just like you, we got stuff to say. We got things that we've been through, things that mean something, things that have meaning and depth to them. But life interrupts us. So what we'll be looking at is, how do we rebound? How do we make the interruptions our second chances, or the springboard for our second chances? I'm going to tell you a story, but I need to first tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, I want to give a quick shout out to my oldest son, Kalen, who is co-producing this podcast with me. He's running lights and sound and cameras, and he's running it all. Set design, he's laying it out. And I get to sit here and just do what I do best, and that's tell stories. So I want to thank him publicly for the time and the effort that he has put in, and the fact that he's bought in to this journey that we're on together. And we are definitely on it together. We talk a lot about the podcast. We talk about what we want to do. We've studied other podcasts. I've gone to some seminars. We've done some stuff to get ourselves ready for this. And we're ready. We're ready for me to sit here in front of this camera and talk to you and tell the stories, and then tell the lessons that I've learned from some of the stories. Some of the stories, I may not have learned a lesson. Maybe you'll be able to chime in once you watch this, maybe on IG or YouTube. You'll be able to throw in a comment or something to say, hey, have you considered ... And I'll be like, man, I never thought of it like that. So the other thing I'm looking to do with this is spark conversations with other storytellers. So if you believe that you are a storyteller, I want you to hit me up, because I would love to have you on the podcast so that you can share your story and we can unpack your antidotes for solutions. So a little bit about me. I'm a singer, songwriter, author. I've written 2 romance fiction novels. We'll talk about those in another episode that deals with men and romance. I've written a bunch of songs. I've produced albums for other people. I've put out a bunch of albums myself. I've performed live with Grammy Award-winning people. Some of the biggest names in the big business used to be in my band. Thundercat used to be a part of my band. Kamasi Washington, part of my band. Still good friends with him. Him and Thundercat. I've worked with some of everybody. Paul Jackson Jr. I've opened for Bobby Lyles and Gerald Albright, and the Emotions. I've done my share on stage. As a producer, I've worked with some local artists who were trying to get their feet off the ground in the industry, and I wanted to pour into them by giving them a chance. My music company launched a few people. So those are some of the creative things I've done. Also, I was a hairstylist for 33 long years. 10 years too long. I should have quit 10 years sooner. Because hairstyling almost killed my back, and it certainly damaged my pockets, because the business changed and I wasn't willing to change with it. I wasn't going to glue on no hair and put helmets on women and make them look like members of the Three Stooges or part of the Oompa Loompa pack. I wasn't going to do it. Y'all who watching, look, I love y'all, sis, but I need y'all to get rid of these wigs. It's killing me. Snatch them off, take them off. We know that they're wigs. It's not a secret. It's like y'all do when you see a man with a toupee on. You're like, oh, he need to take that off. Yes, y'all need to take that off. Let these hairstylists make their money and hook you up with some fly styles and bring short hair back and all that, because that's a lot. I did a lot of that. Did a lot of short hair, a lot of color. I was a short hair guru, hair coloring guru. I did all of that. Owned several salons over the years. Also, I've been married 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I have a child by each wife, and I am currently married to my 3rd wife, and we've been married into our 20th year now, and it's been dope. So I've got stories. I've got a journey. I've got a lot to say. And during this season of the podcast, the first season is focusing on relationships. We're going to dive into various natures of relationships, from divorce to dating to friendship to men in romance to low standards versus lofty expectations. You want him to have a 700 credit score, but you have a 540? Come on now. What is that? But we're going to talk about it, because I talked to a guy the other day who said that, yeah, the woman should expect for a man to have a 700 credit score even if she don't have one. And I said, well, what time zone are you living in? We're living in a time of equal rights, and women want to be viewed as equal partners in life and all that other good stuff, which I'm cool with. So if you want a 700, you better bring a 700. But that's just my perspective. We're going to talk about it. Got some great guests coming on, some radio personalities. My mom, she's going to come on the show, on the podcast, because she is a very known figure in the psychology world. She's been on CNN and NBC. She's even been on that other channel that I will not name, that represents that guy that I will not name. She's been on all those channels. And so she's a psychologist. She's got a wealth of information to share, but she and I are going to have a deep conversation about my father. And she doesn't know that yet. So we're going to unpack that later. So in the meantime, I think that it's important for me to start this introduction off with a story. And a story that I believe will help you to know who I am in a nutshell. But before we get to that, there's one more thing I need you to understand. This is a podcast where I talk and share with you my life stories, and with my guests, their life stories. But we're going to focus on relationships, and then we're going to focus on some other things, focus on creatives, focus on business, because every aspect of our lives can be interrupted by life. Every single aspect. So we're going to focus on all that. So I want to talk about my life story and just give you a glimpse of where I'm headed with this podcast. I have been a guy who has been pursued for many years for wisdom, for information. My phone usually rings because somebody needs something. They want to know something. They want to get a perspective on something pertaining to their life or a situation in their life. I'm that guy, and I always have been. Even when I was a teenager, I was that guy. So much so that sometimes it caused me to be alone. When people didn't want something from me, they weren't around. And that's something that we'll talk about in the friendship episode, because I got a lot to say about that. Recently, recently I went on Instagram Live for the very first time to vent, because I had some things on my mind. A former friend did some things that were not cool. It was cowardly, and it rubbed me raw. And I had never gone on Instagram Live before, and I was like, you know what? I can either go find me a therapist, or I can call my mom or my sister. My wife was at work, who she would be the first one I would call. Or I can just let this conversation exist in my head. And I didn't want to do that. So I got on Instagram Live and said everything that I needed to say about how this person got down and how others have gotten down with me. But again, that's for the friendship episode. So I'm just giving you like a sneak peek of where we're going to go, because I'm going to keep it real and I'm going to keep it raw. One other thing you need to know about me: I'm a God guy. I love God. I'm a Jesus dude, but I'm a real Jesus dude. So I'm not like some of these preachers that do one thing in public and then another thing in private, and they hide and they pretend to be something in front of the folk. No, So on this podcast, you might hear me cuss. Matter of fact, I know you will, because sometimes I cuss. I'm not a cusser. Some folk MF and F and all that is the first three words out of their mouths. That's not who I am. But every now and then, if I get real mad or if I get real excited, I'm gonna say this is some bullshit, because that's what it is. I'm gonna call it what it is. So get yourself ready. If you ain't ready for that, then you watching and listening to the wrong podcast, because I am not going to sugarcoat life. Life doesn't sugarcoat itself. It comes at us raw. And that's how I'm gonna come. I'm gonna come the way I know how to come, and that's raw. I need to come at you with the truth. I don't know, somebody right now saying, ooh, pause, pause, pause. So, whatever. Pause it all you want. So anyway, here's a little story that I think will give you just a glimpse of who I am. When I was a senior in high school, I had a friend who I had a whole crew of friends, but I had a friend who convinced me, very cleverly, I might add, convinced me to sell drugs. Now, I didn't come from that world. I wasn't a gangbanger. I didn't I wasn't in the streets like that. I have close friends that were gangbangers. I had close friends who were dope boys. I was neither of the two. I was a lover and a baller. I played ball, and I was all about the ladies. That was my world. Take me to the club so I can dance, and then after that, I'm gonna call a girl and I'm gonna hook up and do what people do when they hook up late at night, and I'm going to play ball at the gym or whatever. That's what I did. But my homeboy was very, very convincing in that he told me that he wanted us to do something nice and grand, even for our moms for Christmas. And it was a trip how he did it. He was like, man, you know, man, you need to. He's like, come on, Steve, you need to, man, we need to do something big, man. We ain't all the things they've done for us, and he had me. He was right. I wanted to do something big for my mama, and she was a great woman in my life. It still is a great woman in my life, and she had done it all. And so I said, okay, but here's the thing: I had the hookup because I had a relative that was in the game, and he and I were tight. So my friend knew that. He didn't have anybody in the game. So it was nobody he could call. So he knew, if I can get Steve to buy in, make a mental note of that. Buy in is real powerful, no matter what you're doing. So if he could get me to buy in, then he might can make some things happen. Now I had a whole little crew of friends that were around during this time, but I didn't involve any of them in this quest. So I said, all right, we're gonna do it. So I reached out to my cousin, and he told me two things. He said, I'm gonna do it because it's you, and you know I love you and I got your back. But if you get caught, you don't know me, because I don't want Uncle Harold, who was my grandfather, but his great uncle. So I don't want Uncle Harold coming for me. Because my grandfather was the man in our family. He was the patriarch. He was the man. And in every way, everybody looked up to him. Everybody loved him. Everybody respected him. So my cousin was like, dude, don't call me. So I said, no, don't worry about it. I would never do that. I understand what it is. I understand the rules of the game. So we were going to do this thing. And the reason why I'm telling this story, I'm starting this podcast off with this story, is because I want you to get a real clear sense of who I am now. This was 40 years ago almost when this situation happened, but who I am now is who I was then in that respect, because I couldn't sleep. I was nervous. I was anxious leading up to the day that we were going to make this this pickup from my cousin and get this product. And I was always real smart, so I had a game plan on how I was gonna move the product, but I still, this was not something I had done. I didn't carry guns. I didn't fight in the streets. I wasn't about that life. So I figured, okay, I can do it. And I told my boy, I said, look, we're just gonna do this one time because we can make a nice piece of change real quick. My cousin's gonna front us the product. We'll make sure we pay him back, and we're gonna do this one time and be done. And he was like, bet, bet, bet. But I knew this nigga wasn't telling the truth. I knew he was gonna do what he wanted to do because he really wanted to get in the game. He liked being flashy and he liked being the center of attention, but he needed money to do that. Some things haven't changed. You still need money to do that, or a supreme talent. So we it was the day before we were supposed to meet. My cousin pick up the product, and I knew that voice, Steve, don't do this. This will be the decision that you make that can alter your whole life. Because I started running scenarios, and I've always been a very active thinker. I don't have an overactive imagination. I have a very active imagination, but I think in reality. I don't think in fantasy. So I thought about the things that can happen when you selling drugs. Number one, you can go to jail. Happens every day. You got people in jail right now who sold drugs one time for the first time. And maybe because they look like me, that was all they needed to take them and wrap them up, catch them up in the system. Number two, in these streets, you can get robbed. You know, we didn't have no territory. We didn't have no layout. Where we gonna sell? We didn't have none of that. So I had to think about that. Like, wow, we could get robbed. What happens if we get robbed? Because unfortunately, that's number two. That's like 2A. But 2B is getting robbed and shot and or killed, because some robberies go down that path as well. I was like, man, this is crazy. I don't, this don't even make sense. And the third thing, we could be successful at it. And success breeds repetition. I never met a person that was successful at something and didn't try it again, no matter what it was. So I thought about all that. Tossed and turned, tossed and turned, tossed and turned. That morning I got up, called my cousin, said, yo, cuz, I'm out. He said, good. I did not want to do this. I was going to do it for you, but I didn't want to do this. You ain't got no business in this life. Now I knew my boy was going to be hot. And sure enough, when he called to confirm our hookup, our rendezvous, I told him, I said, hey man, I'm out. I'm not doing it. Man, he went right back to the same song and dance. But our moms, they deserve better, man. They deserve the best. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're telling the truth. They do. But you know, the devil will tell you some truth too. You know, I know that the Bible calls him the father of lies, and he is. But the Bible also calls him the accuser. And usually when he's accusing us of stuff, he's telling the truth, because he can't lie to God. God know what we lying about, what we telling the truth about. He know what the devil be lying and telling the truth about. So he's not going to go to God and say, hey, I saw Steve at the strip club. No, he didn't, because Steve wasn't at the strip club. By the way, I wasn't in the strip clubs. I was in the women stripping, but I wasn't into the strip club. Two different things. Anyway, so I told him, I said, nah, man, I hear you. I understand, but yo, I'm out. And I have never, ever been a follower. Never. I've either been a leader of many or a leader of one, and that was myself. Now, I can follow a good leader, but I'm not a follower just for following's sake. So this dude was silky with his words, but that didn't mean nothing to me. I had already parsed every thought and every aspect of this situation in my head. I had already come up with the scenarios that I needed to see in order to know this wasn't a good decision for me. Now, there are cats who have made this decision thinking through those same things and said, well, I'm still going to do it. Maybe life put them in a situation, because life will interrupt us, where they felt like they didn't have a choice. I respect it. I'm not knocking it. I just knew that I had a choice. Maybe I just get a job at the mall and buy my mom something that's from the heart instead of buying her something that's from somebody else's blood. And besides, me going to jail would kill my mama. Me getting killed would kill my mama. So price was too high. So anyway, summer's coming, because now my boy, he's like, well, let me talk to cuz. I said, my cousin's not going to do business with you. He doesn't know you. No way. He's like, well, put in a good word for me. I said, I'm not going to do that, because it's not going to change anything. My cousin is strict to his code. He was going to do it for me because that's my fam and we tight. And we were tight without hanging out. But we were tight. We had nothing but love for each other. But we didn't hang out together. He lived with us for a time when I was in middle school, but we didn't hang out together. We were in two very different worlds. He was all about that gangbang life turned drug dealer life, and good dude, great dude. But I wasn't about none of that. So I told my boy, look, bro, that's not going to happen. I'm not even going to call him because he's going to say no. Oh, man, he was pissed. He was pissed. But I didn't care. I knew that I had saved his life and mine, or so I thought. So we move forward because I'm finishing up high school. We get into the summer, and I got a homeboy that I went to school with who's getting ready to do the summer bridge program at UCLA. And he invited me and my cousin, my other cousin, not the cousin that was doing this thing, but a cousin that I was tight with, that I hung out with. He invited us over to spend a few days with him at the dorm at UCLA. I too would end up at UCLA that fall, but I wasn't involved in the summer program. So we go up there, we hanging out with him, we chilling, partying, meeting girls. I'm already going, man, I'm liking this college life. This is fly. And the last night that we were up there staying with him, I get a call early in the morning. My mom is on the phone, and she's telling me that my friend and another friend of mine got arrested, because the other friend of mine had dibbled and dabbled in drugs, but on the use end. And he became addicted to some drugs, but that also meant he had access and knew where to find drugs. So my friend went to that friend, and they weren't tight like that. They were cool, but they weren't tight like that. Me and this guy were tight, but he had drifted so deep off into the drugs, I had to step back, because I even had to tell his mom, yo, your son is doing drugs. It's no longer fun. Yeah, when we was in high school and right out of high school, we smoked weed and we did all that. But and I wasn't much into weed. I didn't enjoy it. It didn't do anything for me. But he took it too far. He kept going. He kept going into deeper stuff, and it was weed every day, and then it was weed several times a day, and then it was some other stuff, and then it was pills, and it just never stopped. And I was like, man, dude, you got to stop. I'm going to tell your mom. So anyway, my boy reached out to him because he knew he could get him to connect him with at least his buyer. Well, they ended up arrested. They got pulled over, and they had product on them. Imagine that. It had just been a few weeks, just 2 or 3 weeks prior. And now my friends are in jail. And my mom's calling me to tell me, because of course she thinks I may know something about it because they were my friends, close friends. I didn't even get in there it with her about what I knew. I was just in shock and was like, okay, well, I'm gonna call his mom and check on her, call their moms and check on them and see how they're doing. And but that was it. I because for me it was, I told you so. I told you this was a grand possibility. This is one of the options that happens. If you take three people, have them all sell drugs, one of them is going to be successful, one of them is going to get robbed and or shot and killed, and one of them is going to go to jail. That's just the way it goes. The jailhouse is filled with men and women who made a choice to sell drugs. And in some instances, they just made a choice to do drugs, and doing it, being caught with enough on them to be considered possession with intent, gets them in trouble. So it was a nightmare, but all it did was remind me that I listened to the voice I was supposed to listen to. Because that's how quickly life can interrupt you. Sometimes life interrupts us with things that are out of our control. More times than not, though, we did it or someone else did it to us. So, this podcast, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that from every possible angle. But we're going to talk about it through the lens of storytelling, because I know some of you right now are going, well, wait a minute now. What happened to your friends? What you think happened to them? People that get arrested go to jail. No, they because it was their first offense, they got off with some community service stuff. But my one friend ended up becoming like a career drug addict, and the other became some sort of hustler, baller, fake baller, and then he turned into something totally different. But we disconnected. We disconnected shortly after that. First of all, I didn't like how he manipulated my other friend who was already weak, and everybody knew that my friend was struggling with addiction. So I didn't like how he did that. He got him caught up in something on another end that he was already struggling with on one end. I did not like that, and it said a lot about my friend's character, which is something that we'll talk about on the friendship episode, because I'm, even in this older age that I'm in, you see me rocking this white beard, I'm still discovering things about friends that makes me go, I don't want to be friends with you no more, because we're not going in the same direction. One of my favorite Bible verses, the reference escapes me, but it says, how can two walk together except they be in agreement? So I've had to walk away from some people. You going this way, I'm going that way. And I don't have time. I still got love for folk, but I don't have time for you going in a direction that's going to destroy my life, destroy my heart. I don't have time for that. So people choose to stay in relationships with people all the time that's happening, where there's a split happening. And when they do that, when life interrupts you, you have to look and see how much of that you brought on. So we're going to talk about a lot of that during this season. The season will have 8 episodes. We're going to throw them at you and see what sticks and see how you're feeling about it. But we also are going to make sure that we spend some time doing some live engagement so that you get a chance to voice your thoughts on the episodes that you've seen, and comments that you might have about a particular episode or about a particular subject, insight that you might have that you can share that will be beneficial to me and other people, because I'm an open book. I'm gonna keep it a buck, as they say, but I'm also very willing to learn, very eager to continue to learn. So hold on to your hats. It's gonna get real. So I'm glad that you tuned in. If you're still watching or listening, that means you stuck with me the whole way, and I appreciate it. This journey is a journey that has taken me 2 years to really, really arrive at. from buying equipment to studying to seminars to quitting. Yeah, I quit it a couple of times before I even got started. The thought of failing at it, the thought of people not tuning in, the thought of you ain't saying nothing original, the thought of there's a million podcasts out there, they don't need 1,000,001, all of those. But I realized something. My fingerprints are unique. No one else in the world has them. And there are almost 8 billion people on this planet, and not one person has these fingerprints but me. That means I'm unique. You're unique. And in my uniqueness, I've got something to say. And I don't need 8 billion people to listen. I just need enough of y'all to listen so that I can make a couple of dollars. No, no, that's real talk. We want to monetize it, but ultimately, I'm just here to tell some stories and hope that from my stories that you'll grow. So join me for the next episode of Life Interrupts Us, where we're going to keep it real, because I am Stephen Wayne, your storyteller. So you've come to the end of another episode of Life Interrupts Us, the podcast, and I hope that you've been thrilled by the storytelling. I hope that you gained some insight from some of the guests. I hope that you have come away putting more value on your own stories. But let's be clear, life interrupting us is not a random thing. Sometimes it's just the facts of life. Sometimes it's at the hands of someone else. Sometimes it's at the hands of ourselves. So whatever you decide to do, just make sure that you focus on being a victor and not a victim. That you focus on being an overcomer. That you focus on being the winner and not the loser of this game called life. Start telling your stories. I'm going to keep telling mine. I'm Stephen Wayne, and I'm honored to be your storyteller. This is the podcast where life interrupts us. So here's the thing. If you don't play, life wins. So let's play. Take care of yourself.